Good morning. Welcome to Carmel Valley Community Chapel. It's good to be together again. I want to thank Kristen Ramsden for jumping in this morning and being our last-minute liturgist. Thank you, Kristen.
Happily.
I want to thank Holly Thompson for being the deacon to the diaspora. And this morning, we may have more of our members in the diaspora than physically present, but we are happy to have all those that we do have. So thanks for being here. I invite us all who are able to please stand and join responsively in the call to worship printed in the bulletin.
The central task of the religious community is to unveil the bonds that bind each to all.
There is a connectedness, a relationship discovered amid the particulars of our own lives and the lives of others. It is the church that assures us that we are not struggling for justice on our own, but as members of a larger community. Alone, our vision is too narrow to see all that must be done.
And our strength is too limited to do all that must be done.
Together, our vision widens and our strength is renewed. Let us join together in singing our opening hymn, which is one of the song sheets this morning, For All That Is Our Life. For all that is our life,
we sing our thanks and praise for all that is a gift, which we are called to use to build the common good and make our own days glad. For needs which others serve, for services we give, for work and its rewards, for hours of rest and love, we come with praise and thanks for all that is our life. For we must bear, for failures, pain, and loss, for each new thing we learn, for fearful hours that pass, we come with praise and thanks for all that is our life. We sing our thanks and praise for all that is a gift, which we are called to use to build the common good and make our own days glad.
I invite us all to join together into a few moments of silent prayer and meditation. I invite us to take this time to center our hearts, our minds, our bodies, our spirits into this here and now that we are creating for one another. Let us join together in silent meditation.
The reading this morning is from Mark chapter 7, verses 24 to 37. From there, Jesus set off and went out into the region of Tyre. He entered a house and didn't want anyone to know of his arrival, but he didn't manage to escape notice. On the contrary, a woman whose little daughter had an unclean spirit in her, heard about him right away and came and fell down at his feet. But the woman was Greek and Syrophoenician by birth, and she asked him to expel the demon from her daughter. And he said to her, "First, let the children eat their fill, as it's not right to take the children's loaf and toss it to the little doggies." But she answered back, telling him, "Master, even the little doggies under the table eat some of the children's crumbs." And he said to her, "Because of what you just said, go, the demon has left your daughter." Then she went back to her house and found her child lying on the bed, and the demon had left her. Then Jesus came back out of the region of Tyre, going through Sidon and to the Sea of Galilee, and across the region of the 10 cities. And they brought him a man who was deaf and could barely speak, and they begged him to lay his hands on him. And taking him away from the crowd to a private place, he put his fingers into the man's ears and spat and touched the man's tongue. Then he looked up to the sky, sighed deeply, and said to him, "Ephphatha," which means, "be opened." And right away his ears were opened, and his tongue was untied and freed, and he spoke properly. And Jesus gave orders to the people not to tell anyone. But the more he ordered them, the more exuberantly they spread the news. And they were overwhelmed and stunned, saying, "He's done everything right. He even makes the deaf hear and the mute speak." Thus ends the reading.
Let us join together in singing, "Spirit, Open My Heart."
Spirit, open my heart to the joy and pain of living. As you love, may I love in receiving and in giving. Spirit, open my heart. God, replace my stony heart with a heart that's kind and tender. Oh, my coldness and fear, to your grace I now surrender. Spirit, open my heart to the joy and pain of living. As you love, may I love in receiving and in giving. Spirit, open my heart. Let your love upon my heart as my law, my goal, my story. In each thought, word, and deed, may my living bring you glory. Spirit, open my heart
Has anyone here heard about the story of Sibna? Sibna. All right, a new story. The story of Sibna comes from an 800-year-old poem that is well known in certain circles in Ireland, according to Padraig Ó Tuama. It's a story about a king named Sibna. And this king had mistreated a local saint who had come onto his property uninvited. And Sibna saw the man and rushed out of his house naked and belligerently expelled the saint from his property. Well, the saint was so disgusted by the king's behavior that he put a curse on Sibna that caused him to go mad and to forever wander naked, living in trees on the outskirts of human society for the rest of his life. Now, towards the end of the legend, Sibna has been able to find some solace in the company of another saint, a nice saint, a kind saint. And this saint, as a kindness, told Sibna that he would die with a spear or with the antlers of a stag impaling him. And at the end of his life, this indeed happens. Sibna is wounded, and before he dies, he confesses his faith. Sean Hewitt, a contemporary poet in England and Ireland, wrote a short poem about Sibna titled, "Sibna is Wounded and Confesses." And in this poem, we hear the voice of Sibna speaking. This is what he says. "There was a time when I thought the sound of a dove cooing and flitting over a pond was sweeter than the voices of friends. There was a time when I preferred the blackbird and the boom of a stag belling in a storm. I used to think that the chanting of the mountain grouse at dawn had more music than your voice. But things are different now. Still, it would be hard to say I wouldn't rather live above the bright lake and eat watercress in the wood and be away from all sorrow." The poem, if you noticed, is shot through with the act of reflecting back on life. Sibna twice says in this short poem, "There was a time." Sibna goes on to say, "I used to think," and "but things are different now." So a big part of this poem is the decision, or maybe the necessity, to look back over one's life. This is an important act. It is, I think, a way in which the journey might become conscious. And in that process, new possibilities for revelation and transformation might awaken. And I chose this poem for this morning for those reasons, but also for the fact that this poem reminds us of the distinctions between isolation, aloneness, and loneliness. Those are all different experiences. And we may have varying ways in which we experience loneliness and varying ways in which we respond to it. At times in our lives, we may have a lot of people around us and still feel lonely. There may be times when we spend a lot of time alone, and a deep and abiding sense of connectedness with others is with us in that aloneness. Loneliness isn't just about the connections, how many connections we have or how few with others, but it's also about the quality of those connections. In light of the U.S. Surgeon General's recent warning of an epidemic of loneliness in America, and the World Health Organization's declaring loneliness, quote, a global public health concern, it seems to me rather important that we as a community reflect on this together. But how are we going to define loneliness? Well, Matthew Scher defines loneliness as, quote, a compound or multidimensional emotion. It contains elements of sadness and anxiety, fear and heartache. The experience of it is inherently, intensely subjective, end quote. Now, since the early 1980s, social psychologists have described loneliness as, quote, a discrepancy between one's desired and achieved levels of social relations. Now, the news regarding the impact of loneliness on a person's health is startling. And this is from the U.S. Surgeon General's report. It says, lacking connection can increase the risk of premature death to levels comparable to smoking 15 cigarettes a day. Lacking connection increases the risk of heart disease by 29%. It increases the risk of stroke by 32%. And it increases the risk of developing dementia for older adults by 50%. Those are alarming statistics about something like loneliness. And one of the dynamics, social dynamics, that has exacerbated this epidemic is the huge and the rapid change that we've experienced in society over the past several decades, especially with our technology. Youth and young adults are having a particularly hard time as they spend so much more time with their tech than they do face to face with other human beings. Now, in response to all this, the U.S. Surgeon General Advisory outlines a framework for a new national strategy, and it's based on 6 foundational pillars, which are, 1, strengthening social infrastructure, which includes things like parks and libraries as well as public programs. 2, enacting pro-connection public policies at every level of government, including things like accessible public transportation or paid family leave. 3, mobilizing the health sector to address the medical needs that stem from loneliness. 4, reforming digital environments to, quote unquote, critically evaluate our relationship with technology, end quote. 5, deepening our knowledge through more robust research into the issue. And finally, cultivating a culture of connection. So I wanted to share some of that information with you and then now open it up to some conversation. Now, with the huge crowd here, let's not all speak at once. If you will please get my attention, I'll bring the microphone to you, and we can have some conversation about this issue, any reactions you might have to the proposals the Surgeon General has made, any other new ideas. And particularly what strikes me is that traditionally as a church, we have been an institution that sustains and nurtures and facilitates connectedness in society. And one of the unique aspects of our community as a church is we welcome all who come. And the people who come are very different in their political persuasions and in their life experiences, in their backgrounds. I've experienced in every church I've been involved with that I've gotten to meet people I would never have met any other way because they're just not in my circles, social circles. That's a gift. Sometimes it's a challenge. But it strikes me that historically we as a church have something to offer. And here we are at a time when church attendance and interest in attending a church, synagogue, temple, or mosque is declining steeply. Any thoughts folks have? Wayne.
Well, I've been reading some things about the seniors and loneliness and the challenges, therefore, with lifelong partners and you're just by yourself, and also how you can start re-engaging in community activities. And I think that we have a unique opportunity as a senior social world here that most of the folks that come here, but also that live in this area, are seniors. And if some way that we can continue to try to engage with others, both ourselves and as a group, I think we'll really. The excellent example of that was the Sip and Sup last Saturday. It was a very well attended, very active, and pretty much multi-generational, but principally us geezers. So it was a good start and a good continuation of that kind of activity.
Yeah. Thank you, Wayne. I appreciate you bringing that up. We often lament the fact that we don't have young families and kids in the congregation. But there aren't a whole lot of that demographic, moving into the valley, buying homes here. And there is a real need amongst seniors, as you pointed out, and our lifespan is, if you make it to 65, you're likely to make it to 85 and beyond, statistically. So I don't see anything wrong, and a lot of things very appropriate for our context, to finding some ways to focus on offerings that might be real helpful ministry for seniors that are alone and or feeling some loneliness. So thank you for bringing that up. Lamont.
Thank you for opening up this subject. This congregation right now is mirroring exactly what you're talking about, right? For example, look how we're spread around this room. Think how that debilitates singing together. Singing is more than half listening to the other person. And look at the way we're sitting. Yeah. I would sit with you, Jody and Rich, if you joined us and you joined us in one pew. It'd be much better for singing. Why don't we have a policy that we sit together? Would you object to sitting in the front row, Wayne? If we all did it, no one's alone, sitting alone together. See that? So that's that point number 2 you made about policies that enforce loneliness. This church has a policy that enforces loneliness, I think. Number 6. What was number 6? A culture of connection.
Yes.
I think a pew sitting together closely would improve singing and reinforce a culture of connection. So go and do likewise.
Yes, Jody.
I agree with Lamont that that would improve singing, but I also am aware of COVID, and everybody is still getting COVID. So that's in my mind. And that's why I don't, that's why we space ourselves around.
Yeah.
It's just the reality right now. But I do agree with you, that would be better for how it sounds and how we sing.
I also know that, oh, okay, Rich, go ahead. I was just going to say, I also know that on a day like today, when it is very warm and more than a little muggy for my taste, if I was sitting in the pew, I would kind of want some space around me just because of the heat. But I also agree that we should be working together to sit closer together.
When I was growing up and I was in a church, a Baptist church, one of the memorable things that still stands is the social interactions that we had because of a monthly potluck at the church.
Mm-hmm.
And it's the sharing of food, that sharing and having a chance to have conversation with the person next to you, across from you, and you can choose to sit with who. I was on a search committee a few years ago at a larger church, and I read one of the background things about church organization to get ready for it. And what that pointed out was that the church in itself really wasn't the center of the church, it was the social groups that exist. And in our church at that time, it was by age. So we were, Jody and I were in a group called the Deckers. Mm-hmm. And that group would meet once a month, share a meal, and have conversation. And you grew up with that cohort. Since we have really only one cohort here of us, maybe having some kind of way of having social gatherings outside of the church. And Jody and I belong to other groups, and one of the things that this other group does is that we celebrate birthdays. Mm. And so every month, whoever birthday comes up, a group of people, it's not always the same, but by invite, meet at a nice restaurant, and we bring a little gift for the person, and we celebrate, and we spend 1, 2 hours, 3 hours talking. And what you have there is the sharing of the meal, and you get to hear the stories of the people. Mm. You get to know that person in a different light. And I think that kind of thing we could maybe institute. Maybe the book group could meet, when Holly's here and the rest, we get together, we go out as a special, or we could just celebrate as a church once a month, all the birthday people, and just, but have a luncheon after church or something, but to, again, institute something outside socially.
Yeah. Good suggestions. Thank you, Rich. Kristen, do you want to use that mic at the podium, please?
Use this mic. Thank you, Lamont. I know that I sing better when I sing with others. I'm sorry I'm getting over a cold, but so I understand your point too. It's not COVID. But I think what the point is that tech has increased loneliness is very clear, because you're there with your phone and you don't have to engage in conversation, and you don't, apart from your search that you've put in the browser, you're not asking any consecutive questions that come from dialogue. So my father used to say something which I thank him for, which was, I know what I know, but I don't know what you know. My mother on her 90th birthday said, the best thing you can give me is ask questions. So I would think, here I'm tying a lot of thoughts together. Scrooge and the Christmas Carol, the third ghost, I believe it is, who's wearing this great mantle, and Scrooge sees the mantle. He's terrified of this ghost, and he sees claws from underneath the mantle. Do you remember the scene? And he says, "What are those claws?" And the ghost opens his mantle and he shows two children. The one is poverty and the other is ignorance. And I would say that technology, the ghost says, beware them both, but beware this one. And he points to the child that is ignorance. Beware this most, because what we don't know, we can't connect with, we can't support, if we don't ask questions of each other and take an interest in each other, which is what you're saying, Rich, with having conversations. We are losing the art of conversation. And I think it stems from the fact that we're losing interest in the other, and we're putting the other apart from us. And COVID has definitely encouraged that. So I always say what happened to the science of my immune system is strong, and I believe in it, and I can embrace people, even though I'm getting over a cold. I don't know, you can maybe answer that, but I think we can have strong immune systems that protect us, and we can sit together and help each other sing better, and we can celebrate birthdays. We just have to find the will to remember and engage. I think that's all I wanted to say.
Thanks. From my research, and Eric, correct me if I'm wrong about this, but having strong and good quality social connections is an important part in maintaining a healthy immune system. It boosts our immune system. Am I right about that?
Sure.
Yeah.
And social family dynamics. A little bit. They've shown some research as well as far as family dynamics and multi-generation families and such that live together and support each other. People who celebrate, there are families that get together every single weekend to have a meal and such. And me, in my Americanized culture, that seems ludicrous. I would never imagine having a meal every single week with my family. I see them once a year at Christmas like a normal human being, right? What, some sort of, I don't know, sycophanty sort of relationship here. We keep our professional boundaries. And they've shown that to be very, very a kind of counter to health. Actually, the alone-ism, the lone wolf mentality. We have to do it alone, be alone. We got to be strong. You have to shoulder the burden of everything yourself. And when you have family and friends, you can mentally, emotionally unload some of that. But they've shown these generations. You imagine if you have 3 or 4 generations living under one roof, and let's say, middle-aged man loses his job. Well, not that big of a deal. You've got 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 people in the house supporting the house financially, emotionally. If you need childcare, well, maybe you have an aunt, you have an uncle, you have a cousin, you have a grandmother, grandfather, somebody who is able to help and support. So it's not everything is just all on this 1 or 2 people. You have all these generations coming together. As we get older, some of the healthcare aspects, great-grandmother or grandmother needs, wants to go to her club or church or whatever, family member's going to drop her off. No big deal. Otherwise, you have to figure out public transportation. Is she okay? Mental status. Are they going to get there? Are they going to remember what bus to take? You have a family member. So all this is it's this family, and I love the community. And if we can view our community as a form of extended family or the family you can choose, it is much healthier, you know, and as we have these things like the sip and sup and such, I think that is a wonderful way to support each other. But I just see this kind of, this unfortunate, quote unquote, American culture, because I know we're a melding pot, but I see other cultures that are brought from other countries, and they have a much, much stronger family dynamic than a lot of Americans do. And I do think it breeds disease and discontent, as your statistics clearly elucidate. So.
Okay, thank you for that. Yeah. I remember when I was in high school, I had, was it 2 or was it 3 friends who were Mormon. And in the Mormon church, every Monday evening is family night. And you do not do anything other than have dinner together. And then maybe play games. The whole evening is with the family. And this was in high school, and so my Mormon friends were in high school, and some of them were very happy to do that tradition. One of them was rather rebellious, but it struck me as something strange, because my family had 2 brothers younger than me, and my brothers were involved in sports. I was getting involved in musical things, and we all had homework, and we often weren't there at the same time to have dinner together any day of the week. And it is a dilemma we're in, I think, when we know what would be healthier for us, and yet it's not part of our routine. And so how do we change our routine? Struck, Kristen, just wanted to respond to what you raised, the technology issue, which is a big one that we're being impacted by. And it's a big change in our social reality. I was reminded of the change with the invention of the automobile and how people were so much more mobile. And when the interstate highways went in and we could drive from one coast to the other, we could leave our family home and start a new life somewhere else. And people often did. They often did that for the right job. And the extended family was no longer the norm. The nuclear family was the norm. And maybe something else is shifting now with all of our social media. One of the sources that I looked up this week made the case that we cannot get through this by going backwards. The only way we get through this is by going forward. And part of that is in the Surgeon General's list of ideas about using social media and technology more smartly, more holistically, more attuned to the fullness of our needs, without ignoring the face-to-face. And I know when about 20 years ago, maybe a little more than that even, we got a website. Oh my gosh, it was a new thing. There were some other churches that had websites. We weren't the first, but we were part of the cutting edge at that time. And then about 10, 15 years later, we realized that our website was no longer up to snuff, and we redid it. Made it a little bit more accessible and contemporary and modern. And that's been about it as far as our success moving with technology. We finally got a chapel Facebook page was it 2-3 years ago? I forget how long ago that was. And we're still learning how to use it to promote our events. We're not on Instagram. We weren't on Twitter. We're not on, what is it called, X now? And there's something else. Threads, yes, which might be a better fit. But we're not on that. So I do think that part of what we're going through as a society, we have to find ways to move forward with society. Lamont.
I'm at a loss to know why we should improve our technology when, Christian, you're absolutely right, that's what's isolating us. We don't have a technical challenge in the church, we have an adaptive challenge. And one way you know you have an adaptive challenge is that when people suggest changes, they get marginalized. That's when you know you're in an adaptive challenge. So I said, let's sit closer together, and uniformly people said, we can't do that. That indicates we are facing an adaptive challenge, not a technical challenge. I was struck by the fact that 2 people left this church before services started. Why'd they come here to leave? You're the pastor. I mean, if there's any confidence you can't share, I agree.
One of them went because she had to do childcare.
Right. She has more important things to do than go to church. So you come to church and say, I'm not going to come to church. We talk about a challenge in church. We say, let's have dinners outside the church. Why go to church? Why go to this church?
As far as the technology issue goes, I think that is an adaptive challenge. The church has, in my opinion, a mission to go out where the people are. And right now, a lot of people are on social media. If we are going to connect with them and in any way spread the word about what we offer as far as real, meaningful connections with one another, we are going to have to move forward technologically to be where they are.
I agree.
So that's why I think that is important. And that if we don't do that, we're going to just fall farther behind society. Wayne.
Let me just read again what we have in the flyer. True communities, if they want to remain as such, are always reaching to extend themselves.
Yes.
And there's no right or wrong way to reach, but just reach.
Transitions are difficult. One of the things that we can do is that, for instance, does everybody know what Threads are, or TikTok is, or some of that, especially in our generation? And the more we teach ourselves or have somebody come in and teach us, then we can then learn more about it and then work with our different intergenerationally, but also in a community. We can then relate to each other more often. And I wouldn't throw out things that happened in the past as examples. I want to have a bingo. I want to have bingo and potluck kind of thing. And if you do that, then you have the socialization and entertainment, which is similar to what the Sip and Sup was, a wonderful concert and a glorious dinner. So, possible.
Right. Thank you, Wayne. Just to follow up with that comment, we've got our license to have bingo here. And the license is good for a whole year. So we're looking for someone or a small group of people that might be willing to spearhead a bingo night or a bingo afternoon or whatever. Any other closing thoughts?
Can we say a games night so it's not limited to bingo?
That's a possibility. Well, my closing thought is that as a church, we have experience and wisdom about being a community, nurturing connections between one another. And I think That's experience and wisdom our world desperately needs right now. So as far as I'm concerned, our mission has never been more relevant. Any other closing thoughts?
Our gifts. O God, through the offering of these gifts, may we become a more open people, open-minded in hearing your word and wisdom, open-hearted in healing a broken world, open-handed in heeding your call for charity and enacted love. With thanks for all good gifts, we present a portion of our substance and the whole of ourselves. Amen.
Please be seated. At this point in the service, I invite us, any who wish, to make any announcements of joys and concerns, any prayer requests. If there's any way in which we can respond to your sharing, let us know by ending with a phrase like, "Blessed be, thanks be to God, God hear our prayers," or whatever you wish. Is there anything that folks have to share this morning? Eric? Oh, you were pointing to Kristen. Kristen.
I never do this, but in the interest of supporting community, I'd like to give a shout out to the Carmel Foundation. Now, if you go to the Carmel Foundation, you will read a plaque outside, which is so remarkable that I am astonished, first of all, that many of those working there have forgotten that that plaque is there. It's been there since the beginning. And everyone who reads it isn't there like flies to honey or bees to honey. I mean, that plaque is so to the point of what we've been speaking about. And what I do, which I never shout about, but this form of movement that I try to perpetuate and keep alive, is a community effort. It's not like yoga or Tai Chi in that you can do that by yourself, for yourself, in your own time, as you wish. But what I teach is a community activity. And there is a class, and I call it Mindful Movement. It's on Thursdays at 1:30 in the afternoon, and only us elderly and retired can go. But it is an effort to support community and to keep people active and flexible in their thinking, in their feeling, and active in their wills. So I would just, and if you can't come, please maybe tell someone else that it might be something that they would like. But do have a look at Carmel Foundation. It's for those of us that are over 65. And it's a wonderful place. It's very much enacting what we support and uphold here in our little way in the chapel. And they are doing it with classes and movies and activities, and there is 56 different things to choose from to do. And it costs practically nothing for a year to join. So I would really love to see some other familiar faces there and not be the only one from Carmel Valley who attends.
Thanks, Chris. And what does the plaque say?
Well, it was so remarkable. I should be able to bring it up in my photos, because it is basically saying we adhere to, the Carmel Foundation exists solely to encourage neighborliness. What a concept. We uphold no political belief, we have no religion, we have nothing to espouse. We just want to let everyone have the dignity and social possibility that you would have amongst neighbors. Pretty good. I mean, and I've brutalized what it is. It says it much more beautifully and much more succinctly, but to that gist. I'm
Okay.
sorry I don't have it off the top.
That's
I should
okay.
memorize it.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Harriet.
Refreshments are in Fellowship Hall.
All right.
Blessed be.
Yes, blessed be. And thank you, Harriet, for being our refreshment person this week. For our world's renewal. May we today have food to eat, forgiveness to share, and justice for all creation. May we have strength in times of trial and oppression, loss and sadness. For it is in loving that we most fully know you and your power and your glory forever. Amen. This is a time for any announcements. You've already heard the announcements that we have delicious refreshments this morning, so I hope that you'll join us in Fellowship Hall immediately following the benediction and the postlude. And on Tuesday, a link will be going out to a pre-recorded meditation service that you can access at any time during the week. Are there any other announcements that folks are aware of that I'm forgetting? All right then, let us join together in singing our closing hymn, Love Will Guide Us. I invite all who are able to please stand. Love will guide us, peace has tried us, hope inside us will lead the way on the road from greed to giving. Love will guide us through the hard night.
If you cannot sing like angels, if you cannot speak before thousands, you can give from deep within you. You can change the world with your love. Love will guide us. Peace has tried us. Hope inside us will lead the way on the road from greed to giving. Love will guide us through the hard night.
May you go forth this day in peace and in the power of the light of love that dwells within you. May you go forth this day to reach out to one another, to be part of this great community of care, of blessing, of healing the world. May you go forth this day in power and in peace. Amen.